What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another video. I'm so glad that you guys chose to come back, and I'm glad that you're here. Today is actually the last week of 2024, so I'm going to be recapping all the books that I read this year so far, and I'm going to be rating them from a scale of 1 to 10 and kind of doing like book recommendations. I will say that there are spoilers to some of the books that I've read this year. If you want to just have some book recommendations without me spoiling the plot, maybe just kind of like look at the rating and just ignore everything I said. I'll try not to spoil all of it. Oh, and here's Malibu, guys. So yeah, we're gonna start. The first few books that I read, I actually got them from the library, so I don't have them physically. I kind of had a reading slump throughout the middle of the year just because I got super busy with like the salon. I did end up reading a total of 13 books. I think it might be 15, but I don't remember a few that I read. I honestly forgot. Okay, so this book was the book that got me out of my reading slump. For like 4 years, I hadn't read a book. And when I read this book, you guys, I read it in a day. If you don't follow Book Talk, then you probably have not heard of this book. But this book has been everywhere. Oh, Fenty wants to join in. This book has been everywhere, but I'm talking about Verity. Here's the book. That book, swear on everything, it's like a 10 out of 10. It had me reading it, like as soon as the chapter was over, I'd be like, there's no way that chapter ends like that. So I had to read. I read it in like half a day, honestly. And this book was so mind-blowing. The ending was so crazy. So basically the plot is this lady is a writer and she is going through like a slump and she's financially struggling. So she gets a deal for finishing a series of this super well-known author, and she gets asked if she wants to finish her book series of the well-known author, and she'll get paid like a lot of money to finish the author's series. But in order to finish her series, the husband of the author of the series that she's going to be working for is like, you can come to our house and look through all of her, like through her workstation and get inspiration and ideas on finishing her series. Well, she takes up the author. She ends up going to the house of where the author lives, and she finds out the reason why the author stopped writing her series was because she got ill all of a sudden. And it's like a big mystery, and she doesn't really know how she ended up being ill, but she's actually being in a hospice like thing where she has nurses coming in taking care of her, and her husband also takes care of her. But the plot is she finds an epilogue, like kind of like a biography. I forgot what it was called. And the book kind of goes like every other chapter, it like is talking about main characters, what she's going through staying at that house, and then the next few chapters after that, it's the person that she's working for, her biography. And her biography is insane. I will do a trigger warning for this book. If you have had struggles with pregnancies, postpartum, anything that, look at Fenty, she's like watching you guys. But anything that involves like harming a child, this book might not be for you. It's really, really intense. It's also on a smutty scale of 1 to 10. It's probably like an 8 or a 9, not gonna lie. There's a really specific scene where the book talks about like bite marks on the bed frame. Yeah, if you just, this book is a 10 out of 10 at the edge of your seat. So if you like books like that, I recommend Verity. But the second book that I read was Pack the Moon. This book, you guys, I think I rated it an 8 out of 10, and it's super super sad. I literally cried. It's about a tragic love story of his husband who cherishes and loves his wife. After trying to have a child, they find out that she has a chronic illness. Her illness was a really rare lung disease, and she eventually dies from it towards the beginning of the book. But the book is actually, so she knew she was going to die. She knew that she was sick prior to them getting married. And the husband always talks about how his wife changed his life. Like, he used to be an introvert. He didn't know how to talk to people. So his wife, like, was that person who held his hand through all the struggles that he had, and how she really changed him for the better. And because she knew that she was sick and that she was eventually going to die, she left notes for an entire year. Each month, she would leave and she would make a letter for her husband saying, like, oh, well, this month you need to do this. I know losing me was hard for you. It was just very sad in general, because eventually the husband does move on. And I feel like the toxic person in me was like, if I died and my husband moved on, I'm gonna hunt him. But it was actually a very sad story, and it's sad because it does happen. Like, losing your spouse to an chronic illness or an unexpected tragic event, like, that's sad. So, like, this story was sad, very touching, because she actually knew that she was gonna die, and she left notes for him throughout the first year of him losing her. But that one was an 8 out of 10. It was Pack the Moon by Kristen Higgins. The third book that I read was very controversial. I actually read this way before the movie was done, and it is End With Us, and I actually have the copy. Okay, so It Ends With Us. If you have not seen the movie, don't watch it. Don't watch it, because reading this book, I already knew I was gonna like it. One, because it was by Colleen Hoover, but two, because it talked about DV, and it's about a very tragic story. The main character is Lily Bloom, and the reason why I say do not watch the movie, and if you've read the book, you're not gonna like the movie. They miss out a bunch of key details that if you're like a diehard fan and you've like skimmed and reread and proofread, you're gonna be like, oh, well, they missed out this, and they didn't talk about Finding Nemo. And it's just like, if you know, you know. It talks about DV, so it's a big trigger warning. And I feel like Colleen Hoover talks about so many real life events that could happen. And that's why she's a very controversial author, I would say. But I love her stories because she actually brings light to some of the real life events that happen. She's not necessarily making them seem lighthearted, because they're not lighthearted topics, but she does talk about them in a way where if you've experienced it, you are reliving it, but like the ending is always like, okay, well, she went through this, so can I. Lily Bloom comes from a already abusive household. Her father actually abused her mother, and he eventually dies, and Lily was like, okay, well, he needed to. He was a bad person anyway. And throughout her childhood, she fell in love with an orphan, homeless boy who she saved, and they had intimate scenes where they eventually fall in love. But then her father, while he was still alive, caught them, basically almost killed this homeless boy. Lily Bloom never sees him again, and then she eventually moves to, Everything's Better in Boston. If you have read the book, you know Everything is Better in Boston. It's not showed in the movie, but yeah. So she moves to Boston, and she falls in love with a man who she met in one night called Ryle. Her and Ryle have a thing. She falls in love with Ryle. Ryle likes her because she plays hard to get. In the story, she's portrayed as this beautiful girl, copperish red hair. She's very independent. They fall in love. scenes little by little show that Ryle's actually abusive towards Lily. There's a lot of DV scenes too that happen throughout the relationship, but also while they start falling in love, she bumps into her old crush again that she had, who the boy was homeless, and his name is Atlas. So she bumps into Atlas again. He owns his own restaurant that he was so inspired to have, and he had told her that he wanted to eventually own his own restaurant when he was little, and he now has that, and she's like very proud of him. There's still like that chemistry in between them, and Ryle kind of catches on and he's like jealous. And I'm not gonna spoil the rest, but it's either like two options, like stays with Ryle in this abusive relationship. P.S. she does get pregnant. I won't say by who. I'll keep that like as a like, oh my gosh, I want to read this book. Atlas, the option 2 is, will Atlas save her from this DV relationship? Yeah, what will the outcome be? And then that book also goes along with It Starts With Us, and it goes into the ending of this book. Doesn't leave you hanging, it finishes the story. So yeah, both of these were a 10 out of 10. They were very sad. When I finished reading this, I was working third shift and I shut my book and I'm like, what the heck? What kind of ending was this? This is so stupid. I was so mad. And then I started reading this book and I finished it in a day. So I wasn't that mad after finishing this book. After that one, I read He Had Been With Me. I had seen this all over Book Talk. I will give this book like a 4 out of 10 because it is based on like teenagers in high school and it's very like kiddish still, but I don't like the main character. She's supposed to portray an older girl because I think she's in her like 16s, 17s, but she's like really kiddish and wears tiaras and I don't know, she's very kiddish to me. But this book actually, I took a lot of points off of it because in the beginning it starts with the scene that it ends with, and by reading the first scene you kind of already assume like what's gonna happen. Basically, Autumn and Finn, Autumn being the main character, Finn being the like love interest, they are best friends / their mothers are both best friends, so they're kind of like really close from off the bat because they were raised together, and they're actually neighbors, so they're both in love. They won't admit that they're in love, which is why another reason why I took points, because it's very obvious that they both like each other, but they won't admit it. Stupid, I know. But yeah, this whole book kind of goes back and forth like, oh, Autumn did this, and she was like hinting that she had a crush on Finn, and then Finn was like also hinting. In the second book, this is about Finn, but only the first few chapters, because I'm just gonna tell you off the bat, Finn dies in a car accident, and you can obviously like know that Finn is the one to die by the first chapter. So I'll read you the back just to kind of get a little bit more information. Autumn and Finn used to be inseparable, but then something changed, or they changed. Now they do their best to ignore each other. Autumn has her boyfriend Jamie, hate Jamie with a passion, and her close-knit group of friends. Finn has become that boy at school, the one that everyone wants to be around. That still doesn't stop the way Autumn feels every time she and Finn cross paths, and the growing nagging thought that maybe things could have been different. Maybe they should be together. And as time passes, Autumn realizes she might not get another chance to make things right again before it's too late, because he dies in the car accident, and it tells you on the first chapter. This first book kind of like tells you and introduces you to the characters and shows you the history that Autumn and Finn had. This book talks about the aftermath of the car accident, and I actually like this book better than the first one. So the first one I would rate a 4 out of 10. This one gets like a 7 out of 10 because I could relate to this so much. The beginning of this was so obvious, but then it talks about all the people that knew Finn go through the trauma of losing a friend to a car accident, and I had something very similar happen to me, so I kind of related to every single character in this book in some way or another. But yeah, This book was actually way sad. Eventually, towards the end of this book, Autumn and Finn do hook up and she ends up pregnant. But now she's going through this pregnancy alone because he had passed away by then. And this book talks about self-harm, depression, dealing with loss. So that's a big trigger warning if you have or experienced anything of that sort. I feel for you, and this book might not be for you, but it was very sad and tragic to read and very relatable too. So I gave this one a, what did I say, 6 out of 10 because it was relatable. So then I read Ugly Love. I was very excited to read this at first because it's Colleen Hoover, but as I went on, I was like, okay, this is stupid. I don't know if any of you guys are like this, but I hate when books have this like very strong chemistry. The characters have very strong chemistry and they obviously like each other, but one doesn't want to like lead it. They don't want to lead it into anything. They don't want to start like having that relationship title. Oh my god, you need to figure it out. So basically, I actually hated this book so much that I don't even really remember. That's so stupid. I feel like dating just for the benefits of sleeping together is so stupid. It goes back and forth, like, oh, she's falling in love with him, and Miles just like, no, I told you not to fall in love with me, blah, blah, blah. It's stupid. The only interesting part about this book, I will say, is that Miles actually had a pretty rough childhood growing up, and he impregnated his girlfriend very young, and they both got into a car accident right after the hospital with their newborn baby, and they lost their newborn baby in that tragic car accident that they had going home. And then they never spoke to each other after that, and Miles still hangs on to that loss very strong, as any parent would. Imagine losing your child in a car accident when you've only held her for that 1, 2, 3 days that you're at the hospital. But that was very hard read to read. I actually did finish reading it in like 2 days because I was so ready to be done with it. Nonetheless, let's get to my other book that I read, Icebreaker. You guys, I can't believe I told myself, oh my god, this is such a kiddish book. Like, just look at the book. It's got like cartoons on it. Don't judge a book by its cover. It's actually a pretty good book if you like smutty reads. I actually found this book on a Facebook group that I'm in. A book Facebook group that I'm in. That was a tongue twister. And some people are like, oh, well, don't judge by a book by its title. Like, it's actually very interesting to read. It's about these two kids that are in college. One's a hockey player, one is a figure ice skater. The beginning of the book starts with somebody tampers with the hockey rink, and the hockey team have to practice on the figure ice skater's rink. Anastasia, who is the ice skater, starts falling in love with Nate, or Nate falls in love with Anastasia, and it kind of goes like, it goes through their relationship falling in love, and then Anastasia's toxic friend group compared to Nate's like very like brotherhood like friends. She sees how Nate has a really good group of friends who rely on each other, and then Anastasia's one friend, actually, who I honestly think is gay, because he's always telling Anastasia, like, count your calories, like, you need to go to the gym, count your weight. He's just telling her how to live her life. And I feel like the way that he talks and the way he's portrayed in the book is either he has a crush on her or he's gay, one or the other. But yeah, it's a very good book. I won't spoil it because it's actually one of my favorite books that I've read. I will probably read again next year. I give this a 9 out of 10 only because I will take some points off for it being too cheesy at moments. There's like parts where it's like, okay, like that's kind of cringe. Like, nobody's gonna pick you up, and okay, anyways, enough with that one. I give it a 10 out of 10, or a 9 out of 10. And then I got into The Housemaid's Secret. I read this one in like 2 days. It was so good. My first Freda McFadden book that I've read, and I was not disappointed. I even told my boyfriend, you need to try reading this. He read like 4 pages of it. This book was actually so freaking good. The story is about a girl who has a past that is keeping her from having a real job because she was in prison. So she's limited to having certain jobs. And her only way to work is by having housemaid jobs. She gets fired from her previous housemaid job because she is way too involved with the child, and the rich lady who she works for gets mad because the child starts calling the housemaid mom, and she fires her for that. But her name is Millie, and so after getting fired from her first, oh, well, not her first, she's gone through several housemaid positions. But after she gets fired from that one, she gets contracted by, I think, the Garricks is their last name. Well, let's just say she's also had a past for saving people out of abusive relationships. So she's got that name kind of to her, where Millie, the housekeeper slash hero for saving women from DV relationships. Keep that in mind. So she gets hired because apparently she thought she posted this ad, which later in the book it turns out that she in fact did not get accepted for that ad. So she was like, wait, so where did they hear me from? Because the ad that I posted that I was looking for a job never came through. Turns out that the lady who she's working for, Mrs. Garrick, hired her to save her from that DV relationship that she had with Mr. Garrick. It's kind of like a big plot twist. It goes way further into details, so I won't spoil that book, but it's very good. Recommend reading it. I give it a 10 out of 10. I don't want to say too much because it's such a good book. I feel like I did not give it justice, but I recommend it. Okay, the next book, The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. So, I don't even want to talk about this one. This was so embarrassing to read. It was super popular because it's like a very autumn book. Like, the title is cute. It's a romance novel, but I hated it. I hated reading it. It took me a week to get through this book. It's just very childish. Like, they're both grown adults, and farmer boy that she falls in love with, let's just say that he got denied. Let me just start from the beginning. And I don't even want to speak about this book too much because I hated it. I forgot what rating I gave it, but it's a 3 out of 10. Not even. That's like even being generous. I'll give 3 points because the book is cute. I think that's why it was so popular. Jenny is the main character. Logan's the farmer boy. Jenny was working at an office job, finds her boss dead. She went through a traumatic event, so she moves to this small new town where her aunt gives her her coffee shop because she wants to retire. Jenny takes that coffee shop, starts to get to know the townspeople, has a problem with her cafe being broken into and being destroyed. Logan gets chosen by the town people to help her go figure who is tormenting her and with her cafe. She falls in love with Logan off the bat because he's attractive. The way the book described Logan, I could not even picture this man being attractive. Like, he wears flannel. In my head, I'm like, smelly farmer with a flannel. And then there's Jenny, who they don't really describe her that much. Logan doesn't really go into details about her, but she does have black hair. And I don't know, if I'm reading a romance novel, I have to know how the characters look like so I can imagine the rest of the book. I feel like descriptions really help and build a romance novel or any book in general. This book lacked it, so I couldn't really picture both of them. The chemistry was just awkward because Logan was very protective by the townspeople because he had lost both of his parents. So the townspeople, since the town was so small, took him in and cared for him like it was it was like their own child. So that's kind of weird. I thought, like, why do the town people care so much? And the whole book, the whole time was like, oh, everybody in the town is nosy. Everybody wants to know who's doing who's with who. And then they find out later that one of Jenny's workers who had a weird relationship with his aunt was trying to sabotage Jenny's cafe because he was mad that her aunt like left, which, why is that her fault? Why? If anything, like, you're just being dramatic. But yeah, and then it always talks about how Jenny needs to be this new person because she went through a traumatic like life event at her old job, and the whole book is just stupid. I honestly did not like it, and I wouldn't recommend it. If you want to have the book for the looks, then by all means buy it, because look at how cute it is. But don't read it. Don't even bother. But the last book that I'm ending my 2024 book talk recap, let's name it that. The last book of 2024 book talk recap is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. This book is actually very interesting, and I think on chapter 15 of reading it. I started it a while ago, but I've been so caught up with the holidays that I haven't really got a chance to sit down and just read. But it's talking about Pip, and oh no, she wants up. She's like a baby. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is about a high school girl who is doing a school project, and she is investigating the murder of a murder that happened. Sorry guys, I need to adjust you. It's about a high school girl who is doing a project over this real life murder that happened in her town about a high school girl named Andy Bell who got murdered by her boyfriend Sal. And this girl is trying to write her project around Sal actually being innocent, and how there was other key points that the investigators left out. During her investigation, she actually digs too deep into her investigation that some people are trying to tell her, oh, well, like, you're gonna find stuff that you are going to regret. And then she starts getting notes saying to stop digging, you're going to regret it. It's kind of like being threatened through her investigation because they don't want her to find out something that's being kept secret, basically. But that's how far I've gotten so far. I don't know what the secret is. It's actually a pretty good book. So off the bat, I give this like a 8 out of 10 because I love murder mysteries. I love anything that has to do with like big plot twists. All right, you guys. Well, with that being said, I'm gonna say goodbye to y'all, and thanks for watching my 2024 book talk recap. I'm gonna name it. I think I'm gonna name it that. I don't know how many of these I will make. I probably will make some next year throughout the year, depending on how many books I get to next year. I hope to read a lot, and if you have any book recommendations, please let me know. I love reading new books. I love smutty, I love romance, I love thriller and murder mystery. Those are my favorite categories that I love to read from. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next video that I make. I hope you stay happy and healthy, and I hope you have an incredible 2025. If I see you again, thanks for watching. Bye. Bye, guys. Bye. Look at her little eye booger. Oh, my face.